Welcome to the lesson on approximating square roots, irrational numbers, and expressions. In this lesson, I would like to go over working examples as far as which type of problems you may come across in your studies. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's say that you're given the square root of 7 and you need to determine between which two whole consecutive numbers it falls in between. So the first thing you need to do is determine what the largest square root number is away from 7, or the next square root number, which is the square root of 9, and a smaller square root. So that would be the square root of 4. So notice the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 9 is 3. So the square root of 7 is between two consecutive whole numbers of 2 and 3. So then how do we determine what that decimal answer will be? So what we're going to do is calculate how many units away the square root of 4 is away from the square root of 7, which is 3 units away. Divide that by however many units away the square root of 4 is away from the square root of 9, which is 5 units away. So now what you're going to do is divide 3 and 5. So 3 divided by 5 is 6/10. So when you add 2 to 6/10, you get a result of 2.6, right? So the square root of 7 is approximately 2 and 6/10. Okay, so let's say that you're given a problem like 5 times the square root of 7. So the first thing you're going to do is determine what the square root of 7 is. And let's say that you're told to round to the nearest tenth. So what you're going to do is multiply 5 times 2 and 6/10, since the square root of 7 is approximately 2 and 6/10, right? So when you calculate that, you get a result of 13. Now let's say that you're given the square root of 81, and that's divided by 12. So the square root of 81 is 9. Bring it down, you're divided by 12. Find the greatest common factor. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the square root of 81 over 12 is simply 3/4. All right, let's go over another example. Let's say that you're given the square root of 64 divided by 100. So you can simply look at this as taking the square root of 64 in the numerator divided by the square root of 100 in the denominator. So the square root of 64 is 8 divided by the square root of 100, which is 10, right? You can take the greatest common factor of 2 and divide. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the square root of 64 over the square root of 100 is 4/5. Let's say that you're given 2 times the square root of 64 divided by the square root of 100. So you're going to simply break the square root of 64 divided by the square root of 100 in simplest form. So we already know that the square root of 64 divided by the square root of 100 in simplest form is 4/5. So you can multiply that by 2 and you'll get a result of 8/5. Okay, so let's go over one more example. So let's say that you're given the square root of 34 divided by 12. The square root of 34, you're told to round to the nearest tenth. Now, what's your next step though? So you're going to take the square root of 34, you're going to set that between a square root number that's larger and a square root number that's smaller. So you know the square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 36 is 6. So the square root of 34 is 5 point something. So we're going to determine how many units away the square root of 25 is from the square root of 34, which we know is 9 units away. And that's divided by 20, the square root of 25 to the square root of 36 is 11 units away. So now what you're going to do is divide. So 9 divided by 11 will go out 3 decimal places to the right. Bring up your decimal point. 11 goes into 9 0 times. 11 goes into 90 8 times. 8 times 11 is 88. 90 minus 88 is 2. Bring down your 0. 11 goes into 20 once. 1 times 11 is 11. 20 minus 11 is 9. Bring down your 0. 11 goes into 90 8 times, and we'll go ahead and stop right there. So that's 818 thousandths. But you're told to round the square root of 34 to the nearest tenth. So when you add 818 thousandths to 5, that's 5.818. When rounded to the nearest tenth is 5.8, right? So now let's not forget that we are also dividing by 12, right? So 5.8 divided by 12. Now, we usually don't like to divide with a decimal answer. So in this case, what we'll do is take and move the decimal point place once to the right, which would give you a result of 58. But remember, what you do in the numerator, you must also do in the denominator, so that will give you a result of 120. So now you can simplify this further by dividing by 2, and you'll receive a result of 29 over 60. So the square root of 34 divided by 12 is 29/60. Okay, so that's all we have here for this lesson. I hope it was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Thanks.